In Unit 3, David Curry from the Criminology Department at the University of Missouri brings us the unit on gangs, crime, and terrorism. Now, because of their similarities, an interdisciplinary approach that explores counterterrorism from a criminal justice perspective is helpful to gain a fuller understanding of the complex issues associated with gangs, organized crime, and terrorist organizations. The lines between these three criminal groups have become increasingly blurred and ill-defined. There's even a commonality found in the difficulty of assigning an agreed-upon definition of street gangs, organized crimes, or terrorists. The challenges associated with this lack of a recognized definition has become a recurring theme in our study. But by gaining a better understanding of the similarities and differences between these groups, you, as a criminal justice practitioner, will be more effective in pursuing and investigating both of these types of groups, both individually and collectively. Now, over time, all three of these criminal groups tend to undermine the social trust that serves as the glue for cohesive communities and stable relationships. However, they're all social in nature within themselves, and they rely internally on the collective moral support of their colleagues. But unlike other types of criminals who seek to commit their evil acts in secret to avoid detection, gangs and terrorists, and to a lesser degree organized crime, strive for recognition of their deeds and try to make a public statement aimed at a specific audience. In social theory, gangs, terrorists, and criminal enterprises utilize forms of social control to manage their groups and to maintain their organizational integrity, primarily through the way in which they respond to a violation of social norms. Even when individuals operate on their own, the so-called lone wolf scenario that's more often associated with terrorist and gang activities, even when that happens, they're still motivated by their allegiance to or their perceived connection to the larger group. As a social control, these groups seek to attain justice from what they view to be persecution or an offense against their identity. In this context, they engage in aggression to redress grievances. Their approach to administering justice is part of what distinguishes a terrorist group from, say, a guerrilla unit. Terrorists tend to target civilians, while guerrillas typically seek out military objectives. Interestingly, Mexican drug cartels show characteristics of all three, operating as both organized crime and terrorist groups while utilizing gang-type recruitment methods. Motivations for joining gangs, organized criminal enterprises, and terrorist groups vary from identification with a cause, religious beliefs, political convictions, a sense of identity with the group, boredom, money, prestige, fear and intimidation, threats, or opportunities to utilize special skills. Chronic grievances are frequently a part of the social control exercised by terrorist organizations. Consider the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that we will be examining in more detail later in the course. Throughout the radical Islamic world, the perceived occupation of land rightfully owned by the Palestinians is used to justify many of the attacks perpetrated against the U.S., Israel, and their allies around the world. Long-term conflicts and alienation make it much easier to dehumanize and even demonize the opposing faction, resulting in a highly moralistic, explosive, and lethal combination. In recent years, it has become an increasing concern among law enforcement officials that terrorist groups will establish alliances with U.S. street gangs. In fact, there's been some documented incidents of this very thing, such as the case of Jose Padilla. He was a Latin Disciple member who was allegedly recruited by Al-Qaeda to detonate a dirty bomb in the U.S. In a 2005 report, the United Nations concluded that terrorist groups and gangs do seek each other out and build coalitions when their interests overlap, such as in the case of human trafficking, smuggling, and gun trading. As state support for terrorism wanes to a degree, terrorist groups are finding ways to tap into existing criminal networks for both financial and personnel support, and the likelihood for increased support in the future is a sobering reality. Additionally, there is increased opportunity for terrorist recruitment and radicalization in America's prison system, with Islam now being the fastest growing religion in U.S. penitentiaries. Interestingly, some researchers maintain that U.S. law enforcement's aggressive response to gang activity has been counterproductive and that it has served to increase gang membership. We've previously explored this same principle as it relates to proactive counterterrorism strategies that overly stress retaliation and deterrence activities, again emphasizing the need for a balanced approach to counterterrorism as well as to gang suppression and crime fighting in general. There is a benefit to the criminal justice professional in considering terrorism and its threat to homeland security from the perspective of street gangs and criminal enterprises. By applying sound crime-fighting methodologies, such as those associated with community or coactive policing, both overseas and at home, the threat of a successful terrorist attack on U.S. soil can be minimized. Okay, I'm done. Thanks, sorry.